Joining us now, though, to talk about what's trending today is Sam Caucci, CEO of One Huddle. Sam, how are you this morning?
Great, Janet. Thanks for being here.
Sam, thanks so much for joining us. For our listeners who aren't yet familiar with One Huddle, can you tell us a little bit about the company?
Sure. One Huddle, Janet, we are a technology company based in Newark, New Jersey. We transform workforce training. So think all the videos that employees have to watch when they get onboarded, think all the manuals you have to read, think all the compliance training. Our company uses AI to take all of that material that workers need to know to perform at a high level, and it transforms it into quick burst mobile games. So workers can learn not in just a more engaging way and a more effective way, but they can learn in the flow of work.
Very cool. And so I would imagine that your industry gives you some insight into hiring, because obviously to the degree that companies are hiring, they're onboarding staff, and that gives you some insight into the state of the economy. So let's talk a little bit about this jobs report that we saw this morning, because the whispers had been all of the jobs data for the past few months has been indicating sort of a sequential slowdown, but this is the first really big confirmation that is true. Have you been seeing that firsthand? Have you been seeing a slowdown in hiring in your industry?
Sure. So, it's obviously a big report day, and in the markets, we look to ADP for jobs data. We look to the BLS report that just dropped today. Some brands will look to LinkedIn to see what's happening with resumes and profiles. We're a skilling platform, so we have a really interesting line of sight into what companies are actually doing on the ground floor when it comes to investment in their people. And, in a good market, we see organizations creating a lot of training content, a lot of skilling content. We see that the velocity with which new skilling rolls out is highly customized, highly personalized. It's, focused on driving sales, onboarding workers quicker. And when that starts to slow down, we start to get nervous. We start to see, and really about early in Q2, we started to see two trends. We started to see one, organizations started to reduce the volume of content that they were creating. So that means that, if you're in retail, you create new training and communications to prepare your sales force to sell and, properly talk to guests and customers. If you're in hospitality, the same is true. But we saw a reduction in the amount of content being created on the platform. That was number one. And then number two, we saw a shift in the types of training that workers were voluntarily exploring. Now, in a strong market, workers are where they feel upward career opportunities are true. Workers generally explore training games on One Huddle related to their specific pathway at work. So if you're a hostess, you're playing bartender games. If you're a bartender, you're playing manager games. But we started to see a pretty big flip where workers spent over 70% of their time a year ago on company-specific training. And in Q2, it flipped to 80% of their time on non-company specific training, which means you have workers on the job looking at training not related to the job they're in, which means they're nervous. They're exploring. They're starting to, put their head on a swivel and see where other opportunities are.
Have you seen that accelerating in recent months? Because the deluge of data we've been getting is that this slowdown, the sequential slowdown, is something that's really gaining momentum. Have you seen those patterns or indicators accelerating recently?
Yeah, I mean, Q1, in Q1 of this year, we saw the trend tick up. In Q2, like I just mentioned a second ago, you talk about 80% of the skilling courses and games that employees were exploring were not related to their company. That was a major uptick. We also saw a pretty big reduction in the amount of managers that are on our platform that are in a training mode. So again, another good indicator of a workforce that's investing in their workers is that on any learning management platform or human resource system, you would see a high volume of engagement from frontline managers that are creating training events and whatnot. But in Q2, we saw a pretty big reduction as well, as much as it's only around, call it 3 out of every 4 training events from the platform or on generic training topics, not company-specific or skill-specific topics. So it is increasing. We're also seeing a reduction in the number we're not seeing a reduction at this point in time in the number of users. We're seeing a reduction in the number of managers that are engaging. And I hear this when I talk to organizations pretty broadly. I think the management tier is the first tier that starts to struggle in this type of market. If you look at jobs report data today, it means that companies are going to have to do more with less. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing managers start to have to take on more frontline work for responsibility. That moves managers out of coaching and development functions into operational execution functions. And that really has a long-term effect on any business where, when you reduce the amount of managers who are in development mode and put them into individual contributor mode, it's really tough to return back to having strong management and leadership infrastructure. So that's what's happening today. Brands are doing more with less.
We're speaking with Sam Caucci. He is One Huddle CEO. We're talking to him about the latest jobs report and the patterns he's been seeing in his business that indicate that there is a slowdown in hiring occurring. Sam, aside from diverting manager attention to what should be direct worker tasks, what other patterns have you been seeing and how businesses try to compensate for this slow firing environment?
Yes, I think let's talk about the best brands right now, because I think that's also really important today, because brands are going into the holiday season, the back half of the year, and what the best brands that we see today are doing are really investing. They are on offense, not on defense, and what offense looks like is they are investing in cross-skilling their workforce. And I think this is really important. We're in an AI moment today. It's said that upwards of 50% of the tasks that make up work are going to change in the next half decade. Organizations really are not even certain what skills are going to be necessary for workers today. But the action that we're seeing with the best brands in the market they're focusing on cross-skilling a worker today to do multiple functions, so that if there is a reduction in force, if the market is going to force them to riff or try to, again, continue to do more with less, they are going to be in a position where their talent force has the ability to step over to the left or to the right and take on more functions. And I think that's really important. We have this whole job hugging trend that's coming out. Everybody's talking. I'm sure, Janet, you've seen job hugging as it's the phrase of the month right now. And I just don't see the real story isn't about hugging, which they're blaming workers again for, I guess, holding on to a job. But I think what they're really speaking to is there's a lot of employers out there that are holding out when it comes to workers. And, from our vantage point, workers have a lot of skills. The workforce behavior is one that is workers are thirsty to acquire skills necessary to unlock more earning potential. And again, back to what I said, the best brands right now are going to be not holding back. They're going to be investing in, and they're going to take advantage of workers that aren't hugging, but are actually trying to hustle pretty much at work.
We're speaking with Sam Caucci, CEO at One Huddle. Sam, there's been a lot of discussion of late of the impact of lower migration levels on the jobs market. There's an interesting story on the front page of the New York Times this morning about how, to some extent, the fact that we have less worker supply in the form of fewer non-native born workers means that the economy doesn't need to create as many jobs in order to remain at a fairly steady unemployment rate. In fact, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing kind of this, again, as we mentioned, a slow firing environment. Have you been hearing anything from employers about the relatively lower supply of workers, or is that simply not an issue right now, given that there's less demand for hiring?
I'm hearing more from brands that they're trying to elevate the ways that they are utilizing the talent they have in front of them within their four walls today. And when we do a lot of work at One Huddle with heavy frontline workforce environments, whether that's manufacturing, warehousing, healthcare, which is a big driver of today's jobs report. You have retail, hospitality. 2 in 3 American workers today do not have a college degree. They are not on LinkedIn. They have skills but struggle to signal those skills to their employer. And again, I see organizations today that are looking to pour more into to workers, those are the brands that are kind of leading the charge and staying ahead and trying to stay nimble as there's a lot of things that are out of the control of employers today. I think there is a lot of pause at the moment. Today's jobs report coming out, employers are uncertain of what's coming, tomorrow. And so I don't necessarily, I think we're seeing the most of is we're seeing employers who are trying to figure out how do they leverage the talent they have within their four walls, because the cost of rehiring is tremendous, right, Janet?
Right.
I mean, it takes 5 times more to go out and post a job, run an interview process, make a selection, train up a worker, and then maybe it doesn't work out. So it doesn't make any economic sense for brands. The best brands know this. So they're trying to find more creative ways to win with the workers they have. You saw a moderate uptick in hours worked in the jobs report today. Again, I think that there's a lot of brands who are doing it right, and everybody should be thinking about this. And it is happening with the best brands. They're focusing on what they have in front of them, and this is a month-to-month charge right now for a lot of employers going into the holiday season.
Sam, it's been a pleasure speaking with you this morning. Tell us where we can follow you and tell us where we can learn more about One Huddle. Sure,
yeah. You can find One Huddle at the number one huddle, like the football huddle. The NFL kickoff last night. One Huddle, HUDDLE.co. Sam Caucci.
That's Sam Caucci.